Dear colleagues, good afternoon. We're happy to welcome you within the frame of our next session. And I'm Ani Movsepe. I'm one of the Policy Lab facilitators from Armenia. And this is a hybrid session, again, within the frame of the EU4Youth Days 2022. And today, right now, we will be speaking about the Policy Labs as a tool itself for engaging with youth in policy and decision-making processes in various regions, namely the Eastern Partnership region, the Western Balkans, and the EU Southern Neighborhood region. So without any further delay, I would like to present Mr. Christian Wagner, who is the team leader of the EU4Youth Youth Engagement Roadmaps project, under whose supervision a series of policy labs were launched and conducted in the Eastern Partnership countries. So Mr. Wagner, the floor is yours. Please go on.
Thank you very much. But in this case, Ani, I think we can really be on, let's say, Christian and Ani, as we know, let's say, each other quite well. So welcome, everybody. Good morning, or let's say also now for some of you, good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here and to have the opportunity to participate in this knowledge exchange event, presenting some of the basic design, also some preliminary findings of our policy labs, which we have conducted over the last 1.5 years now. Still, the process is not yet completed, but just to let me share, let's say, some basic information about the project as such. Later on, we will learn also more about other policy lab approaches in the other neighboring regions, following also this, I think, very successful and interesting cross-regional event on youth with our colleagues from the Eastern Partnership and the Western Balkan, Southern EU Neighborhood South and Western Balkan regions. So first of all, just to give you very, let's say, basic information, Gennady, we can also go to the next one, thank you. Well, for those who are, let's say, quite familiar with the project, I can really probably skip lots of this information on the slide. The main thing is, of course, that the overall EU policy on youth, which is quite familiar to you, is especially focusing also on providing better opportunities for disadvantaged youth to also, let's say, contribute to youth employability, employment, social inclusion, and inclusion, and all this by various means of, let's say, policy instruments. So in any case, for us, especially the EU is one of the key actors in the field of youth policy development in those fields, which are, let's say, of key interest to many of our also neighboring parts and regions, especially linked also to, for example, tackling unemployment and to improve the situation of youth needs or young needs, people not in employment, education, or in training. Of course, also linking to that we have to address also issues linked to the youth goals, digitalization, climate change. Also now the situation with the war of aggression against Ukraine is, of course, something which has a major impact on all our implementation so far. But generally speaking, the youth policy is one of the key priorities of course, not only this EU Year of Youth, but also of the EU4Youth program as such. Gennady? So just to give you very short information, we are in this case presenting this center pillar of this slide indicating this youth engagement roadmap project. And one of our key activities is focusing especially on the facilitation of the youth participation and also strengthening youth empowerment. And one of the tools, that's the reason why we're sitting here together, is also the policy labs, which we are in this case implementing here. The policy labs as such are not only a, I would say, instrument and methodology which we adopted, but they are also, in a wider sense, an important instrument to foster participatory approaches in each other countries. So what we in this case would like to see is that especially they are part of supporting the multi-stakeholder dialogue, and also in this case, to bring in different perspectives for discussion with hopefully tangible outcomes to achieve during these, let's say, series of roundtables and other formats we are conducting. Next slide, please. The project itself, our project is coming to an end by February 23. So we just have 4 more months, I would say, to go, which leaves us quite a lot of additional, let's say, activities to be conducted. But what I think is important to say is that we have, in this case, already achieved quite a few, let's say, important, let's say, steps. In particularly, we talk about the completion of thematic reviews covering education, employment, but also participation in these countries. and also supporting the initial, let's say, steps for promoting youth employment partnerships, a project and an activity which is now taken over, particularly by our colleagues from the Phase 3 project implemented by the Central Project Management Agency of Lithuania. Next slide, please. What in this case we can say that policy labs are for us especially an instrument to support, as I already said, youth goals. The field focus which we see have been in the past, let's say, 18 months, especially topics related to youth employment, but also green sustainable development, linking of digitalization to those topics, and to foster by the instrument as such the youth policy participation. And all this also having said with the background that the Commission is also strengthening their efforts to establish a discussion and also to foster the development of a Eastern Partnership Youth Dialogue, which should be also modeled according to the model of the EU Youth Dialogue, which we have also been working on in the recent months quite considerably. So definitely this is something which we expect also to be taken up by another Phase 4 project to be implemented as of next year. Now coming back to the policy labs, I think this is probably the key slide of what is the approach, what we're doing here. The youth policy labs are for us an instrument to capacitate young people, to empower young people participating in the policymaking cycle. It's about mutual learning, it's about co-creation. And that's especially, I think, the real essence of the policy labs. And for those who have already been participating yesterday, we showed, demonstrated a short, but I think very interesting video about the policy labs as such, which we'll also share the link with you in the near future. So generally speaking, we are focusing in our policy labs in a more bottom-up approach on identifying policy challenges. For example, just very concrete, in the case of, for example, Moldova, the career guidance higher education to ease transition to work. By participating of different groups, representing not only youth organizations, but also, let's say, youth from rural areas, government institutions, public institutions, even municipalities, private sector, in this case, also private sector representing, for example, HR companies or HR, let's say, research and, recruiting companies, and also other NGOs and civil society actors. It was possible to develop some current recommendations how this career guidance, for example, could and should be improved, as we see it is as a key instrument to improve and to ease the transition to work for young people, especially when they're coming also from the higher education sector, a sector which, of course, on one hand provides quite high quality education, but at the same time is still challenged by the fact that there is a skills mismatch still occurring and present. When we talk about the principles in these policy labs, first of all, we are applying the Chatham House rules, which means what is being said in the room remains in the room, which is, I think, a key of creating trust and also giving to the opportunity to public officials to state very openly their current understanding of the situation of the challenge identified. That we have a very inclusive approach. That means that we are also trying to invite as many young people as possible, covering also disadvantaged groups coming from the regions, facing challenges linked, for example, even to health, mental health, and other issues, belonging to, I would say, neglected groups in society and others. And that this is all being, of course, said on the basis that each participant is to be treated equal. So in this case, we try to be, let's say, also inclusive in the way and equal in the way that, for example, policymakers participating in this process are not, let's say, dominating, but they are seen as equal participants and also listening to young people, some of them only 16, 17 years old, to also having something meaningful to say. The outcomes, which we hope for, are mainly a set of policy recommendations, which shall be fed into the overall approach of the policy discussion in the respective field. We have as a very innovative element in these policy labs, and that's coming back to the principles, this kind of micro-experimentation. Some proposals, for example, how to improve career guidance, are tested in a 2-3 month period, where young people, together with key stakeholders, in this case, for example, career orientation, staff, or even, let's say, institutions of higher education, test what can be done to provide better service to young people if it comes to especially career guidance and orientation. It's also about non-formal and informal learning, because each of the policy labs as such, which is taking place over a period of 6 to 8 months, is providing a lot of, I would say, informal learning opportunities for those participating. And last but not least, we see it already now that quite a lot of those young people, I would say the vast majority of young people participating, are indicating that they feel much more empowered by this kind of process because they are feeling taken seriously. They are also having something to say, which is being taken into account. And last but not least, it's also an instrument which is ideally to be institutionalized also in the future. We have here, now next slide please, a few, let's say, kind of still aspects. The whole thing about policy labs is that we want to see it in a holistic perspective, in a system thinking way, seeing the whole picture. So in this case, also what could be then the key policy challenge to be addressed from the perspective of those participating in this policy lab. It's about design thinking, user orientation. It's also from what must be to what might be. So really taking into account what could be a potential solution, using also creativity techniques in order to really come to maybe new approaches to a known problem in order to then take on the next step of exploration, experimentation of possible solution developed or identified. And it's of course also, as I said, especially a place where people are coming together and learning from each other, seeing also not only the different perspectives, but also the different approaches. Next slide, please. What in this case we have seen, that's also a basic structure. Some of you are already quite familiar with it. It's giving, let's say, a more technical picture of how these policy labs are implemented over time. The key element is the policy lab 3, so the numbering is policy lab 1, 2, 3, 4, where we have this micro-experimentation testing phase, where we also do an evaluation of those testing. Did it work? Why did it not work? What are the recommendations on? But you see, it's been developed over a period of time, which means that we also rely on the constant participation, regular participation of those who have committed themselves to be part of this policy labs. What we can then also see here, and the center, I'm very glad also to show you some graphic, let's say, summary of the results of the policy labs you conducted in 21 in Ukraine, but also some further impressions of the policy labs, that this has been also a very, I would say, engaging, but also demanding process. As I said, 6 to 8 months is quite a long period, but it was also demanding to the policy lab facilitators. And here, my thanks goes especially to those who have been facilitating this process. And we'll come into the next slide, please. Then we also can see that the topics which we are addressing in this policy range from really, let's say, youth entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, up to green economy, digitalization, even to, let's say, then easing the transition from education to the labor market by addressing education, youth employment topics in our, let's say, policy labs. The current policy labs, and here you see that for given reasons, we are not able to conduct a traditional policy lab course in Ukraine so far, are especially also again focusing on some more in-depth topics which we had addressed also in the previous year, where we are in this case talking about again youth entrepreneurship. We're talking about especially career guidance systems, transition from young people from education to work, and also about the overall youth participation in society economy, how the youth participatory approaches could be improved and shall be improved. Yeah, just the final, let's say, comments on the success factors. What we see in this case is, as I already mentioned, that's also why it's highlighted here in red. We need well-trained facilitators, not subject experts, as it's a creative process. It's a process which has an open end because we are not knowing yet what kind of recommendations are to be developed. So it's really a lot depends on the capacity of those who are facilitating this process. On the other hand, of course, we also have to be realistic. So not everything which is maybe then thought of a beautiful solution might be then also realistic in terms of potential implementation. But also it's important that, again, we have a continuity of those who are participating in the process as such. Maybe the next slide, because in this case, we'll talk about the results. It's mainly that we have conducted a policy lab, but I think more important than the figures is the feedback which we have received. It's also taking into account the time which we are having for this event. We are in this case also focusing especially on the feedback from not only the participants as such, but also we are currently conducting a survey on those who have participated in the policy labs in 2021. But the preliminary results are quite promising on the one hand. it was definitely, let's say, mentioned that we have a very, let's say, open, proactive participation of the participants, which gives them an opportunity to really be part of this participatory approach. But they also had a very, let's say, positive feedback on the overall methodology. But at the same time, we were challenged by the fact that we had changing group of participants, both from the policymakers, but also sometimes from the youth representatives, as it is, as I said, quite also challenging to keep someone for 6 to 8 months in this kind of process. We are currently also thinking about ways how this, for example, participation could be eased. But on the other hand, the overall positive approach needs time, and therefore it is a prerequisite that also those young people and policymakers and other key stakeholders participating are really committing themselves to be, let's say, online in the group for that period of time. On the side of the learning, of course, it was also clear that if you have young people, as I said, some of them only 16, 17 years old, others quite engaged and already experienced youth activists representing youth organizations, and then arranging it to, let's say, professionals from the public administration, means that we have people of different knowledge background. And to integrate these perspectives, but at the same time to utilize it, to create new perspectives, I think that's on the one hand a challenge and at the same time a chance of these policy labs. And that means that also we had a lot of informal, really, let's say, learning that new skills have been acquired by those participants in the policy labs, which we, I think, can also be looked upon in a very positive way. Yeah, then I would say what we in this case currently doing, as I said, we in this case was especially thinking about how to create a sustainability element into the youth policy labs, as we have conducted in the last, let's say, now 2 years. In total, we will be having then 18 policy labs, let's say around 17 in this case, implemented. But what is, of course, for us important, that we would like really to create this approach into a more coherent and sustainable approach of using policy labs as an instrument to promote and also to ease youth participation at various levels of policymaking, be it at the municipal level, local level, but also at the national level, and also facilitating more the exchange among the Eastern Partnership countries on this specific approach. Yeah, I think that's the key findings, what we do have in here. And I maybe can conclude it with the fact that it was also for all those who were involved in designing, but also in organizing these events, a very, very challenging, but also rewarding period. Mainly also because we had also to revise some of our traditional thinking. For example, I was also quite skeptical about having maybe sometimes very young people being involved in this process. But when I was participating in some of these events, I was usually very positively surprised by the openness, but also sometimes by the competence and even the knowledge those youngsters were showing when they were also talking about topics related, for example, to employment, because that's, of course, something which is still, I think, at the center of concern of many young people in our regions. Yeah, thank you very much, Annie. I think then I will stop here.
Yeah,
and
thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
Thank you for the insight and the interesting presentation. At the moment, I do have 2 questions for you, since you have mentioned that the project is approaching its end. It would be February 2023. How do you see the continuation of the policy labs? Will they continue being implemented in the Eastern Partnership countries, and how are you planning to ensure the sustainability later on?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. The point is that sustainability, of course, is always at the core of any kind of typical project implemented by any kind of, I would say, organization. What we in this case here are envisaging is 2 things. First of all, we are in this case also counting on the implementation of the EU4Youth program. There will be this so-called phase 4 project on youth empowerment and engagement. And here I think it would be a great opportunity also to anchor the policy labs as an important tool and instrument in this kind of project approach. On the other hand, we do have the facilitators, even expanding the numbers of them. And they are also providing, I would say, the key resource, which can be also drawn upon by our colleagues in these inter-partnership countries, also the public administrations, be it national, but also at local levels. So that we hope that by creating also a policy lab hub, a kind of a network of existing facilitators, which could be then also linked. And that's one of the ideas we will explore in depth in the coming remaining weeks, months of our project, linked potentially to the SALTO network. would be, of course, a great opportunity also to promote further the idea, but also to give, let's say, public administrations in the countries the opportunity to draw upon this, I would say, really unique resource and experience.
Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, as it has already been mentioned that those policy labs were something new for our Eastern Partnership region. No policy labs and youth labs, they exist in the European countries and also in the Western Balkans region. And we're happy here to host our next speaker here in the room, Mr. Ognjen Markovic from the Western Balkans Youth Labs project team leader, and we shall kindly ask you to also give us your feedback and share your experience related to what you have been doing so far in the Western Balkans, and taking into account that you have also Regional Cooperation Council as a support structure that basically we have been missing, that we miss in the Eastern Partnership region. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello again from my side. I'm Ognjen Markovic, team leader of the Western Balkans Youth Lab project, and it is a great pleasure to be with you today here in Brussels. So somehow Brussels connected these two regions through projects, but also through today's event. I'm very glad that actually I can also learn from other experiences and actually see some of the things that might be also used within our project as well, having in mind its content-wise importance. So on the very beginning, I would like to stress that Western Balkans Youth Lab is something that has been actually proposed by the EU and Western Balkans leaders at the Sofia summit back in 2018. And as of 2020, RCC, as a regionally owned organization, striving to create better life conditions for for citizens of the Southeastern Europe, took the role and actually started implementing this very important project. So why? Because in the Western Balkans, we have more than 20% of the overall population young people, and somehow having in mind that youth is actually the driving engine of the development of the Western Balkans, it does not come as a surprise that Western Balkans Youth Lab project strives actually to increase mobilization of youth in policy making, strengthen formal and informal mechanisms of youth participation, but also increase co-creation of relevant policies with youth. Earlier within the discussions, we spoke that not only youth policies, but also all policies that actually matter to young people and that on different ways actually impact lives and well-being of youth in the region. So the Western Balkans Youth Lab project is actually consisted of 4 components. So first one is youth policy mapping, then we have the youth policy labs as such, strengthening national youth councils and youth participation at regional and international events. So following the earlier discussion, but also everything that has been presented by Christian, I believe that after I finish the presentation, you will understand why we have these 4 complementary and interlinked components. So we do not have only youth policy labs, because the other 3 components are actually supporting efficient and successful implementation of the youth policy labs. So I will start with the first one, youth policy mapping, which consists primarily of the mapping reports for each of the Western Balkan economy, where we somehow on the very beginning of the project implementation, thanks to the team of regional experts, created an overview of the legal, strategic, and institutional framework for each of the economies. And as a result of this in-depth analysis of the youth policies status quo, we have developed an informal mechanism of donor coordination on youth agenda in the Western Balkans. Why? Because we are aware that there are many international partners supporting youth in the Western Balkans through different activities, projects, and actions, but we somehow wanted to find a way on how to skip overlapping and actually encourage synergy building. So on the left, you may see some of the photos from one of the donor coordination meetings, where we actually gather young people, policymakers, and representatives of donor community, primarily European Union, but also Council of Europe, GIZ, UN agencies, OSCE missions in the region, and so on. So what we do when we meet at regular basis once per year is actually that mostly representatives of donor community present what they are doing, what they are supporting, but also listening to the young people from the region, what are their needs, and actually which projects are needed to be supported. On the second donor coordination meeting that we had in December last year, we also provided a pitch for the youth to actually present concrete ideas, and happily we had, I don't know, is it some good luck or just a good momentum that some of these ideas that were presented by young people later on have been supported by the EBRD as well as OSCE. On the right side, you may see the Youth Actions Donor Assistance Platform, which is also one of the tools that we created, which actually consists of data on all relevant regional projects that are actually currently undergoing in the region, with main information about the project beneficiaries, timeline, budget, and similar. And this is a tool mostly dedicated to young people and actually to donors, I would say, so that they can see who is doing what and to whom to contact when maybe starting some new project, but also to ensure that someone else is not doing something that they are aiming to start. But on the other side, it's also convenient for young people to check which donors are active in the youth field, and as you can see, the platform is very youth friendly, and it can be served by the location, donor, sector, and so on. Beside regional projects, we also have the overview of regional ones, of the projects that are bilateral or at the economy level. Thank you. So now we came to the second component of the project, which is Western Balkans Youth Policy Lab. And as you can see, there is a difference. Project is named Western Balkans Youth Lab, and this component is Western Balkans Youth Policy Lab, because we are here aimed at policy. We should be also very careful with the wording, because policy is something prepared and actually checked by the policymakers, later on adopted, and that this component is actually aimed and somehow represents the heart of the project. So we have firstly prepared Youth Policy Lab together with the experts from European Youth Forum, who really helped us a lot to adjust the EU Youth Dialogue to the context of the Western Balkans. And I have to say that this was really demanding a very long process, but also thanks to Ivana, who is present here. She was the one who was even writing the project, but also participating in the methodology development, while I somehow came when everything that's the hardest part has been done, but very dedicated, and thank you for that. So once we prepared the Youth Policy Lab methodology, we started with first Youth Policy Lab, but before that, I would just shortly like to present you the structure of how it goes. So before starting with any of the Youth Policy Labs, we create regional pool of experts, which is consisted of equal number of young people and policymakers. They create regional recommendations, and these regional recommendations later on should be adjusted to the level of each of the economies as per agreement of the youth and policymakers from each of the Western Balkans. So Policy Lab implementation and solution creation at the level of each Western Balkan economy is something that is the most important part of the Youth Policy Lab. Here you may see that as per Balkan Barometer, which is the annual survey of the RCC, we can see that 60% of young people in the region think that inadequate employment opportunities is one of the biggest problems that young people face, together with the lack of access to education, quality of education, as well as low level of involvement in decision-making processes, as well as health issues. So it does not come as a surprise that First Youth Policy Lab has been dedicated to youth and employment. Here we just try to visualize. These are actually the visuals of each of the regional conferences that we had. So on the kickoff, we create regional recommendations, after which for a few months at level of each economy, concrete work is being done. Then we meet again on the midterm conference, where each of the economy can present to each other what they did and maybe receive some feedback or suggestions. Then they continue with the process, take into consideration all the comments received, and final solutions are being presented at the final regional conference. As a result of this First Youth Policy Lab, we already mentioned, we have created law amendments, roadmaps, support to the development of the national strategies, youth needs assessments, while focusing on the youth guarantee mostly. When it comes to the second Youth Policy Lab, because I don't have much time, again, as per opinion of young people, it started its implementation on the mental health. We followed the same methodology, created 13 regional recommendations on how actually to tackle mental health, and then each economy actually chose 1 up to 3 regional recommendations to focus on, because we are aware that they cannot work on all of 13 of them. And actually now I can share with you, because we will have the midterm conference to see what is the current status. We are actually creating and supporting the youth component of the National Mental Health Strategy of Albania for the following 10 years, which is the first time ever happening that one strategic document has its own youth component. We are supporting campaign on mental health in 4 out of 6 countries. You can see one of the example where it's just very simple, but I believe it goes straight to the point. We are supporting development of the creation of the national program on mental health for youth in Montenegro for the following 4 years. Creation of multi-sectorial body consisted of the ministers themselves in Serbia to tackle mental health, which will actually meet 3 times per each year in the following 5 years, and so on. As I do not have much time and I was not aware of it, I will go further on the third component of the project, which is strengthening national youth councils, through which we are supporting, through which actually we provided 24 young people working in the youth councils to visit Slovenia and Croatia during the study visit. Some of the photos are there, and also we invited representatives of the youth councils of Czech Republic, Germany, and many others, because we just used the geographical well position of Slovenia, and this really showed as a great activity to learn concretely from the EU examples on the spot. Next slide, please. Is participation of the Western Balkans youth in international conferences so far more than, what we did is shared ideas, we trained on youth advocacy, learned about youth dialogue in the EU, and also had some of the representatives of the presidencies over there. Next slide, please. When it comes to fourth component, ensured 100 young people to participate at 8 high-level conferences, and here it is crucial to highlight that they do not attend the conferences, but rather they participate at the panels together with the prime ministers, presidents, ministers themselves, and so on. So we ensure that their voices are being heard, not just to listen. Next slide, please. What does the EU means to Western Balkans youth? As you can see, freedom to study and work in the EU, as per opinion of 50% of them, and that is why we strive to really bring this best practice of even European Union of consulting and involving young people in policy making, and that is one of the reasons why we are really trying to live EU values through our project. Next slide, please, and final one, and I believe I am right on the time. it's youth time. It's always the youth. It's always youth time. And through these projects, Western Balkans Youth Lab, but also the great work you are doing in your region, we should pay more attention to the needs of young people and not only consult them, not only involve them and take pictures with them, but rather really involve them in the processes. And as experience shows, and what I could also hear from you earlier, young people will always show their commitment and motivation to participate just with proper consideration of others. And that is why I invite you all to follow our work through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all the others, and would be happy to catch up with all of you in case you would like to learn more, also during today's event, but also in following days, months, and so on. And I'm sure that we will meet again on some of the other occasions. Thank you very much for having me, and that's it from my side.
Thank you so much for the interesting presentation and for this nice journey. Wishing you all the best with your future endeavors. Dear colleagues, we're also privileged to have our third speaker today online, Mrs. Ivona Ganko from the European Training Foundation, who has been also a part involved in the first policy lab conducted by the European Commission back then in 2017. And however, before proceeding to our third presentation and asking our first speaker to proceed, there are two questions that I would love to bring today here, also for the people who are present here in this room and also for those who are following us online. Please think about those two questions that I will address now, and later by the end of the session, we will speak about this. The first question is as follows: taking into consideration all the successes and all the challenges that we have been facing while conducting the policy labs, how do you see, how could the policy lab hub, the creation of the policy lab hub be done, and how it will be launched or maintained in the Eastern Partnership region and of course beyond it? And what are the main, let's say, most effective ways of engaging participants in all the policy lab cycles while you have been implementing or are implementing your policy labs? So please think about those two questions, and I invite also all our online participants to address their questions to all our three speakers, and we'll come back to those questions a bit later. And now, please, Mrs. Ganko, the floor is yours. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the nice introduction and invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you. Unfortunately, not in presence today, but still it has been a great pleasure for me to listen the speakers talking about policy labs in Eastern Partnership and in the Western Balkans, because actually now I was going back 5 years ago when we started the process in the Southern Mediterranean, just with a simple idea of connecting young people with policymakers. And now I could hear how it has evolved throughout those 5 years. And actually one of the most important elements for us while we were trying to design the policy lab as such was how to maintain sustainability and how to have a continuation of this design thinking. So I was very happy to hear that actually what we tried to do at the very beginning, meaning connecting different partners and young people, policymakers, practitioners, researchers all together, has been taken on board also in the other regions and also at the EU level. So as just said, I had an enormous pleasure to participate in design thinking of the very first policy lab in the EU neighborhood that took place in the three countries of Maghreb, in Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. Actually, it was placed in Rabat, but with participation of those three countries altogether. When we created policy lab tables, country policy lab tables, but also we had a transversal discussion about issues that were very relevant both for policies and for the youth perspective. So one of the main areas that and ideas that we had is how to build trust among participants, and as already heard also from the previous presentations, this trust is the most important in connecting those different partners and connecting ideas. The rules of Chatham House are very important here, and the equal treatment of all the participants, as we also heard in the other presentations, are actually key in building engagement and in facilitating the discussion. The issue that young people are treated in the equal way as policymakers at the top high level, because we had a chance of having at our meetings top level policymakers, bringing them at the same level really helped a lot of building trust and also engage young people in sharing their ideas and sharing their challenges. And I think that those elements are really key in building policy labs and putting forward the ideas for further change, how to combat challenges from real world perspective. Another element that I wanted to share with you is also how to create a favorable condition for those discussions. It is very, very difficult, I need to say, but once we build trust between the parties, then it's becoming easier, and there is a very strong openness, and then there is this will to make a change, because as we could see in both Eastern Partnership region and in the Western Balkans in particular, when young people can observe that they can make a change and they can contribute and they can really share their ideas, and their ideas are then put forward even in the legislation, that it's very difficult. It's a huge process at the country level involving many stakeholders, is very important. And this we can observe already in the Western Balkans, that those challenges that the young people are facing and the ideas that they have are then transferred at the policy level and at the legislative level. The design thinking that we were trying to implement as well is about, again, building trust and how to make all the parties equal in the discussion. And now that I remember, one of the very, very nice elements that we introduced in these first discussions were playing the roles. So we were giving high-level policymakers the role of a young person facing particular challenges of difficulties with inclusion, not only in the labor market, but also from the social perspective, facing poverty, coming from not favorable background. And it was very, very interesting to observe how such a role play makes also think others, makes gives more openness to also absorb those ideas. And this sharing, I think, is key also to put forward in all the countries and all the regions for further continuation. Indeed, one of the key challenges to further discussions and this engagement and involvement is how to ensure sustainability. As Christian said, of course, we have a project timeline and we need to think about how to go forward to the project perspective. And in my opinion, and it has been proved that once the ideas are really reaching the policy level, it make it happen, because it could happen at the European Union level, and actually even policy youth labs design was put forward for the youth strategy at the European Union level, but also then for the continuation that we can, for example, observe in the Southern Mediterranean, that the ideas that were put forward by the policy lab were taken on board under the multilateral cooperation at a high level within the framework of the Union for Mediterranean. And the last declaration for the Union of Mediterranean is including those ideas, and there is an engagement and further monitoring of the implementation of the proposals built back then. So here again, it's very important also to empower young people and to make them the space to share those ideas. And once it is visible that it can happen, then it can be put forward for further cooperation, further thinking, and for further change at the policy level. One of the elements that also we were observing while implementing the policy lab 5 years ago is also sharing experiences among different countries. So specifically, country tables are very important to connect and engage country stakeholders. But this peer learning component from other experiences, challenges, from good practices, but also those practices that were not so successful, is also very important in connecting different elements and bringing new ideas and bringing more innovation to be put on the table for further discussions and for new thinking and for making the change. The main topic that we were discussing back then, as already said, was youth inclusion. And this is a very, very difficult topic because we are talking about social inclusion, but also inclusion in labor market, in transition from education to work, where we have quite unfavorable economic conditions, and now we are facing even reinforced challenges due to geopolitical developments. And here one of the elements that we were putting forward is also this element of learning from each other experiences, of seeking those practices also from the level of the European Union, engaging practitioners in particular for adjusting their successful thinking into those innovative approaches. So I'm very happy to really hear today's discussion, that the youth dialogue is continuing, that this is just one moment in the process, and we will continue both at the regional level, at country level, and I hope that we also have a chance for thinking about exchanging between the regions and for making those elements that were proved successful also shareable with between the regions, between the countries. Because I believe that this active engagement from different perspectives will really make the change possible, and it's proving that it's working at different levels. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the information, your interesting presentation. And still, I can see with that we have 10 minutes remaining. Maybe I can invite all the speakers and all the people present here to reflect on those two questions that have been raised by me a couple of minutes ago. Just to repeat, how do you see how the Policy Lab Hub can be launched and maintained? And maybe you can also share the most effective ways how to keep engaged all the participants of the policy labs throughout all the cycles of implementation, especially putting the emphasis on the government officials, on the policymakers. Who would like to comment first, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, maybe also from our Policy Lab facilitators, the Policy Lab facilitators from the Eastern Partnership countries. People online, maybe do we have any questions from the people online? Not at the moment. So in this case, I would like to invite our people here present in the audience to maybe to share their experience or their thoughts related to the Policy Lab Hub, and also their experience on how to make the people be engaged throughout all the cycles. And also maybe, I don't know, our speakers would like to share their experience as well, or we can get some ideas from the Policy Lab facilitators.
But maybe to break the ice, I just
Yes.
in this case, well, I think what I've seen when I was participating in those policy labs was that when you have the people on board, it's great to have those discussions, but the key challenge has been when we have, let's say, sometimes 6-8 weeks in between the meeting, how to keep them on board, because all of the participants have their other professional obligations, or they are students or others. So one of the point was, which we also learned in the second cycle, was to give a clear perspective. Okay, for example, we're having those meetings, this will be the next step, and we had then also introduced a much more, I would say, coaching approach during this kind of period. So I think that's probably what our facilitators are not even thinking about, because they already introduced it, but it was a kind of permanent also contacting of those participants, and also coaching, mentoring them in those experimentation phases, as I just outlined, which made it also much more easier to, let's say, to keep them, let's say, on board, because there was a constant, let's say, kind of involvement. However, still, we had a certain level of fluctuation of participants. I think that's probably something very difficult to be avoided when you still have people being involved on a voluntary basis. And I think that's something which is, especially from the side of the youth, understandable, because we were not only relying on, let's say, youth council or organized youth as participants, but also as we had open calls, people being selected on the basis of their motivation, on the way how they were then, in this case, also approached. And I think that's a plus on the one side, and on the other side, of course, it keeps somehow the challenge in it that these people may then also have a very, let's say, degree of commitment. So, but maybe that's my perception as I was participating, but probably maybe you have there another perspective or a view how we can approach it.
Since Anya raised in particular the participation of government officials in policy labs, I'm looking here at the government officials who have been very dedicated to our policy lab cycles. Maybe we can pose this question to you, Marcel, and to Nino. What kept you participating in this Policy Lab sessions throughout the whole 2 years, pretty much, that we have been implementing? Why did you find it interesting, useful, and whether your government, your ministry, your youth agency is planning to somehow use this approach in the future?
What's that? No.
I'm not government
Another.
representative. Another, city. Yeah.
But I can follow up on that thought. Well, I think what got us engaged in this whole process is the same thing that got us involved for the longer period of time, is our commitment to developing the youth policy that we assumed when entering the Ministry of Education and Research in our case. Well, I want to continue your thought, Olga, because it's a challenge we had in Moldova, because it's not only youth policy, it's not only in the reach of the Ministry of Education and Research. We have other ministries that have specific policies focused on young people, and this year's Policy Lab, it was more in the field of another public institution that we had challenges getting them involved. So I think this is also a lesson to learn for us as public institution. And where is what is more important, to get somebody on board who is deciding things inside the ministry, or get somebody on board who is executing things and can also advocacy for some changes at the higher level in its own institution. Well, I think whenever we hear the word youth, I think me and you all here from the National Youth Agency are always on board, because we're always trying to find out what are the new instruments that can be implemented in the national level or brought down to the local level. And this being said, this also we see an opportunity for us to continue this policy lab outside what is being done by the European Commission and founded by the European Commission within our own power, and how we can use this instrument in developing youth policy at the local level. This will be our main focus. But the big challenge is how you get the government to be on board. So this is a discussion we had earlier. Maybe it's time to assume power over an instrument and multiply it through different different layers of power inside the country. We will try to do it. We will try to replicate it. Still, we are the ones who are doing it. We are not the ones who decide that this is going to be done, but we will advocate for it. A lot of people coming in, going out along the way for 6 months, 7 months, as much as a policy lab goes in Moldova. Young people coming in with different ideas, that they are engaged in their own job, as Christian mentioned. They don't have the time to be dedicated to a particular task, and they are doing this volunteer. They were just sharing their idea, and then they have to commit that they will do the micro experiment. I think it's the same with public institutions, with people working for the public institution, because we also have our own tasks that sometimes are being thrown at us, and have to prioritize things. But I think the commitment is there from our side. I think we can promote it for other institutions to do as well. And maybe this platforms where we can share and we can communicate to each other, see how things work, and in the national and the regional level, is a great opportunity for us to see what we don't do, what we could do better, what others are doing, and try to replicate it back at home.
Thank you so much. And maybe I can collect, since we have just less than 3 minutes remaining, one comment on behalf of the Policy Lab facilitator related to the Policy Lab Hub, the launching and how it can be maintained in the Eastern Partnership countries, since we are having Policy Lab facilitators from this region. Yes, Nina, please.
Well, having a network of Policy Lab facilitators, and also having a platform for them to share experiences, and also maybe take joint efforts in order to promote Policy Labs and create opportunities for further integration of the Policy Lab methodology in sectoral policy development as well, would be very, very beneficial and important event, I would say. And I think we have quite a strong team here already, who still needs capacity building, but there is a strength and there is a motivation of people who are in the network to push it forward and to develop it. So it can be a very good driving force, these people to actually create this hub and somehow to ensure that it's sustainably developing and it's not limited in time. But of course, it is important to also invite others who might be interested in this policy lab approach to develop not only in quality but also quantity and build capacities further.
Thank you so much, dear colleagues. We've already reached the limit of the time dedicated for this session. I would like to thank you once again, all our 3 speakers, offline and online, all our colleagues present here, and all the participants following us online within the frame of the EU4Youth Days 2022. So wishing all of us good luck and see you very soon. Yes, that's it. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.